Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Delighted and always honored to have back with us today Jordan Sekulow. He's the Executive Director of the American Center for Law and Justice. And boy, he and his organization, they do a great job. One of the great hawk companies and watchdogs there on all the key issues. Jordan, good to see you, my friend. How you doing, bud?
Thanks, Perry. I'm good.
Hey, listen, well, what did you think of the election? Quickly, your thoughts on the election.
I think it's an exciting time for conservatives. There were a lot of good conservative candidates. I don't look at them like Republican, Democrat, but whether or not they're going to be people that come to Washington really fighting for what they said they would do. And I think we saw a lot of candidates like that. We have to be realistic in our expectations for at least the next 2 years. We've got a president in office who's got the veto power, but it's a huge improvement, and it shows conservatives can win elections. That whole idea, which media loves to kind of kill off conservatives every election cycle. They don't win every single race and don't win all the swing races. This time it showed, conservatism's here to stay, and it's actually the message is getting to younger people and different demographic groups, which is very important.
All right, so won't take over until January. Are you confident that this incoming crowd will have the tenacity to get things done, but most importantly, to finish some of the investigations on the Obama scandals? I'm thinking the IRS, Benghazi, maybe the Obamacare with the president trying to change it after it's in office. Do you think they will go for it?
I do think we're going to see a renewed kind of effort. The U.S. Senate, because it's been in the control of Harry Reid and really Obama allies, has never fully investigated those scandals you just talked about, also Fast and Furious. And we just got a document dump on Fast and Furious from the Department of Justice on the election night. It's a typical Obama administration. Last week, they dumped 60,000 plus pages of documents. Some of those have come out with Eric Holder, the outgoing U.S. Attorney General, who was saying some pretty nasty things I can't repeat here, about Republican members of Congress who were investigating Fast and Furious, the gun running issue. You look also, of course, the IRS and then Benghazi. Those have never really been flushed out by the United States Senate. And the question we're kind of in right now is what will get done before the new Congress in January? And will Republicans be tough enough when they're still in the minority as they are right now to stop major actions by the administration? And then, of course, President Obama's threat that he's going to do everything by executive action.
Well, it looks like he's going to do something with immigration, obviously. Over the weekend, I see where the vice president got snapped back a little bit.
Right.
What's that tell you? Doesn't that tell you that he's going to do something no matter what anybody else thinks?
It shows me that he's determined, right? I mean, he's not even willing to try and negotiate. I think what he's thinking is this, and this is President Obama we're talking about. I'll take the executive action. I'm going to go as far as I can with that. That means acting on his own as President of the United States and trying to say that it's really about interpretation of the law. It's not a new law. He's not legislating. And then we'll see what Congress does. And maybe I'll sign a congressional act, but I'm not going to wait for that anymore. So I'm going to go do my thing. And that's why I think when Vice President Biden reportedly tried to kind of break in and say, okay, how long do Republicans think they need to get something comprehensive through after the new Congress? And he shut that down. He said, I've been waiting already during my administration, so that's not going to happen. So I really do believe he's going to take that action on immigration. I think it could backfire substantially. People, he talks a lot about how, well, it was state elections and it was local elections, and he was elected nationally. The truth is, though, that these candidates who won against a national agenda, the Obama agenda. And one of those issues was immigration, and people kind of all across the country agreed with this idea that they don't want to see immigration done the way he has asked for it to be.
All right, so what can the Republicans really do in this lame duck session? I mean, if he's going to go for some kind of executive order, what can they do?
Well, they filed lawsuits in the past against President Obama's executive actions, one on appointments, and they've lost. The Obama administration has lost. So the Congress has been able to win in court. And that was, again, the House of Representatives, Perry, acting on their own. With the U.S. Senate now, President Obama doesn't have a blank check. He also doesn't have Harry Reid there to stonewall for him, to kind of say, we're not going to put any legislation on your desk. So President Obama hasn't had to veto things because it hasn't gotten to his desk. Now there's a real likelihood that comprehensive legislation, reform legislation, and I think if Republicans are smart, what they'll do is put forward kind of the two different types. There'll be legislation that's smart, comprehensive, and very difficult that won't be very difficult for President Obama not to sign. Fixes to some of the huge problems in the Affordable Care Act, not to save the Affordable Care Act, but so we're not punishing business owners, like the hours per week before you become a full-time employee for purposes of the law, where people have been losing hours at work. And then there's the big fixes. There's the tougher fights, like getting rid of Obamacare. Maybe the Supreme Court's going to do that. We haven't talked about that yet. It's possible the Supreme Court may do that with this new case that's there, but I never want to put too much weight on those cases.
Wow. Have you ever seen Harry Reid so quiet?
No, it's a very welcome sign. You know, for those of us in Washington, D.C., it's been a long time since the idea that conservatives are going to have a real seat at the table in Washington. Of course, you know, through media and through talking to people and their constituents in the House of Representatives, there was that idea. But the kind of the shift that's going to happen, the cultural shift that's going to happen here in Washington, just on Capitol Hill, it's not just the U.S. senators who got elected or the members of the House. It's the staff behind them. And in the Senate, that's a lot of people, very high level, very qualified people who will now be working on conservative investigations into the scandals we talked about. They will be supporting law that's good law with great staffs. And you know, so for me, that's always a really important part of this story of these elections, these kind of change wave elections, that people don't always take home as much as the cultural shift. It's not just the 100 U.S. senators over there. It's their staffs of 30 and 40 people, including the committee staffs, who are real experts and can help when we're having debates, when we're putting forward legislation, and when we're in battle, which I think it's going to be for the next 2 years with the Obama administration.
Jordan, I realize nobody wants to impeach a president. I mean, it's got a lot of problems with it, but it appears that he may be in the mindset where he's just begging them to go for it. And do you think this incoming crop of conservatives will put the Constitution before politics if he continues to abuse powers?
I think they would, especially this immigration move. You know, that's what I think we're all going to have to look at closely. Sometimes he's talked up big executive actions, and when they've actually been done, they may have been wrong, but they were certainly not as extreme, not as great of a executive assertion of authority as it sounded like it was going to be. But if he does that, we can look at then, okay, how's the breakdown of Senate work? Assuming Alaska and then Louisiana, let's say Louisiana goes Republican in the runoff election, that would put Republicans at 54. Now, for impeachment, you got to have 2/3. Now, 2/3 means 67. So there'd have to be a number of Senate Democrats on board with that to move that way in the U.S. Senate. Does that mean the House can't do it? No. But ultimately, it takes both houses of Congress. So I think it'd be an uphill fight in the U.S. Senate ultimately. But we have to look. You know, these executive actions, and there's plenty of Democrats now. Remember, they're looking and they're not as loyal for these next 2 years to President Obama as they would have been if this was the first 2 years of his presidency. It's the last 2 years. He's on the way out. If you're a Senate Democrat, you either have 2, 4, or 6 years left to serve if you're coming in January. And so you're thinking towards the future. Being aligned with the president may not always be the best decision.
Politically, if the Republicans coming in continue investigating these scandals, in particular Benghazi, and especially with the mandate now that has been turned over in Congress, it appears that Hillary's in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, a lot more discussion is going to go to that, Perry, too, is Hillary Clinton, her relationship with this administration, how much power she had as Secretary of State, the influence she had. She's tried to really distance herself. And I think for some issues, she's correct. I think she is more of a hawk than President Obama and tougher when it comes to taking military action against, for instance, a group like the Islamic State. I think she would have had a different strategy and handled that differently. At the same time, she was part of the administration, and these things happened on her watch, especially Benghazi. We still haven't really gotten full answers there, and we've got the guys who wrote the book who were there, the 13 Hours of Benghazi. I mean, all of that, it puts up a very different narrative, tells a very different story than what Secretary of State Clinton said and what the White House has said. So, yeah, this doesn't help her either. But at the same time, it looks like she's still a major front runner on the Democrat side.
Wow. Well, Jordan, thanks for your time. I know you are really tight scheduled this day and every day.
Absolutely.
So thanks for what you guys do there at ACLJ.
Thanks, Barry.
And blessings to you, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, God bless. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back. Well, as you know, today is World Orphans Day, and it sets up a discussion for a lot of things, primarily that of adoption. And we are delighted to have with us Mary Ostyn. She is an adoption expert and the author of a great book. In fact, hopefully you'll get it up on the screen for you. Forever Mom, What to Expect When You're Adopting. And there's a picture of it right there, put out by Nelson Books, and you may want to check it out at the bookstores. And she is also, her and her husband, they have 10 children, 6 of whom are adopted. And so, Mary, nice to have you. How are you today?
All right. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you bet. Well, what decided you and your hubby to start adopting children?
Well, for a while, we thought we were done having kids when we had 4 kids by birth. But then about the same time I started to have some serious baby longing, we also became aware of the plight of orphans around the world. And we started talking about adoption then. Wow.
So tell us about the process as you were looking into it. How difficult was it?
Well, any adoption is lots of paperwork. It involves a social worker coming out to your house and checking out the place and asking you questions about the way you were parented and about your wishes regarding a child. You have to. One of the kind of mentally hard things is filling out a form that tells what type of child you might be interested in adopting, and they ask you about special needs then and whether you want a boy or a girl, that kind of thing. So wow. It is a pretty long process.
Now that's what the book is about, right? I mean, you can people read this and learn a little bit about the process.
Yeah, there's a chapter in the book just about the pre-adoption process and the things that you can think through and decide as you're waiting. But then a lot more of the book is about helping children settle in and what issues you might be facing, depending on what age your child is when they come home.
All right, now you have 4 daughters from Ethiopia and 2 sons from South Korea.
That's
now,
right.
How did you choose? I mean, were you looking for children from those areas? How'd that come about?
Well, we actually first started thinking about adopting a little girl from China, and that was just the very first dream in our hearts. And then we found out a little bit more about China adoption, and at that point, both parents had to travel for a couple of weeks, and our bio kids at that point were 4, 6, 8, and 10, and we didn't really want to be away from our other kids that long. And a friend of ours said, well, you know what, you ought to check out South Korea. And so that's how we ended up adopting our 2 boys from South Korea. And then, every country has their own requirements regarding family size, the amount of income that they want the family to have, how old the parents can be. So some of those were kind of guiding factors. And for a while we were thinking about, after we adopted our boys from Korea, for a while we were thinking about adopting an infant in the U.S., an African-American infant in the U.S., but we had an adoption fall through there. And interestingly enough, that same friend who guided us towards Korea said, well, you know what, the agency that I work with and really like is just starting an Ethiopia program. That might be a possibility for your family too. And that turned out to be where our girls were. Wow.
So how young was the youngest that you adopted?
Josh was our first adoption, and he was 4 months old when he came home.
And the oldest?
The oldest was a sibling set of 9 and 11-year-old girls. That was from Ethiopia. So pretty broad range of ages.
Wow. Now you're homeschooling these children.
That's right. Yeah. We
I mean,
only
you got your
are
own
homeschooling
school.
5 these days. Yeah. Well, we have 5 graduated by now. So
really?
Only 5 left at home.
What's been the hardest?
Probably facing the adjustment process with older kids and realizing that we needed to change some of our parenting strategies and be a lot more flexible. And, you know, as experienced parents, we thought we kind of had a system figured out, but with older kids, especially kids who, you know, remember their first family and have a lot of grieving issues, you got to be a lot more flexible and, you know, just give them a lot of patience and understanding and, you know, set aside your concerns for a while about some types of behaviors you don't really want to see, because the biggest thing is bonding.
How was the blending process between your biological children and your adopted children?
You know, a lot of people ask that question, and I think maybe partly because we started adopting when our biological kids were quite young, it just, for us, has felt like one normal way to add to our family. And it's a lot of fun. We had all the kids over for dinner last night, and, you know, my oldest biological son is wrapping his arm around the shoulder of our oldest adopted daughter, and you know, there's a lot of warmth there and a lot of caring, and they're just brothers and sisters. You know, they fight too, but it just feels normal to us.
Wow. And at what point do you explain to the younger children that you have adopted that you adopted them?
Well, I think that process needs to start really early on, and sometimes it can feel like an awkward thing to adoptive parents. So when I talk to other adoptive parents, I really encourage them to practice telling little bits of their story when the babies are still too young to even really understand. And that just helps us get acclimated to explaining the story to kids in a natural way, because it is part of their life, and we always want our kids to feel free to talk to us and ask questions.
So what would you say to a couple that's looking into this? What are they in for?
Well, it's been such a great blessing in our lives. You know, there have been great challenges and at times more challenges than I expected, especially helping older kids settle in. But we are so blessed to have these kids in our family. I would encourage people to do a lot of reading about possible issues and do a lot of thinking. But, you know, if it feels like the right thing for your family, then go ahead with confidence, because it's a beautiful journey.
How and when does the bonding take place when you adopt? I mean, did you see these child in advance? Did you have trips back and forth? I mean, or they just show up on your doorstep, or what? What happened here?
It's amazing how abrupt it can feel. Now, for example, Ethiopia, you do have to have a trip to Ethiopia to visit kids, and then you get them home a few months later. So in some cases, I mean, people who adopt from foster care often get to have some visits before their kids come to them full time. But in a lot of cases with international adoption, they send you pictures and maybe video and give you as much information as they can. But you know, then you get in country and they hand the child to you. It can feel really abrupt, I think, especially for the child.
Wow.
But bonding, which was your original question, I guess, takes time. You know, it varies from child to child too. Some kids settle in really quickly and effortlessly, and some can take several years. So it really varies.
Did most of your children come from orphanages?
Well, I don't want to get too much into their own personal stories, but a lot of kids, especially in Ethiopia, spend some time in an orphanage, and a lot of the kids in in Korea, spend time in foster care before they come to families. So it really varies from country to country, and the way that they handle the process while they're waiting for the children to get into their forever families.
Wow, I would assume for the older ones it must be quite a cultural shock.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. You know, I think one of the adjustment issues that was harder than I expected was the food. You know, our girls had spent 9 and 11 years eating a totally different diet, and then they came to America where, you know, almost everything has cheese on top of it. Well, in Ethiopia, you don't eat cheese, and they thought it was disgusting. They still don't like cheese, but thankfully they taught me a little bit of Ethiopian cooking, so we have Ethiopian food every now and then, and they also got used to a lot of American foods too. So it's fine now, but for a while I wondered if they would eat anything other than rolls and I think bananas.
Really? So quite the international experience there for a while, huh?
Oh yeah.
So how old are your children now, Mary?
Well, our adopted kids range in age from 9 to 19.
Wow.
Our biological kids older than that.
Are they out on their own, the older ones?
Our biological kids are all grown and out of the house. Our 19-year-old daughter is just doing a dental assisting program, and she's living at home while she gets that 1-year program done. But then she's next summer hoping to get an apartment of her own. So
what
she's
an incredible
excited for the next adventure.
What an incredible experience. So, what do you want people to get from your book, Forever Mom?
Well, I wrote it with 2 moms in mind. The first mom that I had in mind was one who was just exploring the process and wanting to know more details and wanting to know how to get herself educated. And then I also wrote this book for the mom who is deep in the middle of possibly some real challenges with adoption and wants some encouragement and some ideas for helping kids settle in better and just to really be encouraged along her path. So those are the 2 moms I wrote it for. And so I mean, I hope it blesses all adoptive parents, but especially those 2 moms who are in my heart.
Wow. Well, congratulations. Do you have a website?
Yeah, I blog at owlhaven.net.
Okay.
And the book can be found at forevermombook.com and also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
All right, check it out. It's put out by Nelson Books. It's called Forever
right.
Mom, What to Expect When You're Adopting. Well, Mary, you're a delight and an inspiration, and it doesn't look like you're too wore out either.
Some days.
No, there are those.
I've had my coffee this morning, though.
Yeah. I hope you have more than 1 bathroom in your house.
Oh, yeah, we have 3. Yeah.
Thanks for your time, and best to you, and thanks for the book.
All right.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Hi, we're back. All right. Delight to have Doug Gould with us, and Doug's a special guy. He heads up Foundations for Recovery.
Yeah.
One of the great organizations in Southern Oregon, and they're forever busy. I don't know, what are you doing now?
Trying to get some sleep. No,
Yeah.
we're trying to find when I can sleep, but
Yeah.
it's going wonderful. We just love it at the foundation.
Yeah, you guys are doing a wonderful job. You have some real concerns. You know, we passed Measure 91.
Yeah, lovely.
Which is legalizing marijuana in the
Yeah.
state, and which is, you know, I think we lost our minds. But the reality is it's coming. I
Yeah.
guess it won't be fully implemented until July or so.
Exactly.
But you deal a lot with this issue.
Exactly.
How bad is it?
It is bad. And first of all, I just want to say thanks to theDove, Perry.
Wow.
You guys were the only news organization that responded to my public service announcement that we put out last Monday, or last Wednesday after the election. We sent articles to 10, 5, Channel 12, and even in the Tribune. This is a bad law for Oregon. We have noticed at the Foundation for Recovery, you know, a lot of people will say, well, marijuana use is not a gateway drug to anything else. And even though there might be some statistics indicating that may be true, when I look at the eyes and the individuals that come into our office, and the majority of our clients today that are struggling with opiate addiction, alcoholism, heroin and meth,
Wow.
when they all say to me that they started at the age of 14, 15, 13, 12 with marijuana, you can't convince me that this is good for our state.
Wow. All right. Now, I don't know how we're going to police it. I don't know how we're going to correct it. It's just going to create havoc in our community. And I guess we have to live through it before we wake up again. You know, it's too bad. But there's this e-cigarette thing. And it was designed to get people off of smoking, but now it's got a whole nother application that can fuel the very thing you're trying to help people with.
Absolutely, and this is why I wanted to come on today, because this coming Thursday, and we'll get to that, we have a luncheon, a free luncheon for the people of our community. The e-cigarettes were designed to, as a short-term use, to help the person who's battling nicotine to slowly reduce the effect. almost a kind of a medically treated or moderation-based type of recovery.
Bring you down.
Bring you down, which is fine for short term.
Right.
But what's happening is the dealers and manufacturers of not only marijuana but also the other opiates and meth and heroin are finding ways that they can adopt their drug into these e-cigarettes. So if there's parents out there listening to the program today, if you're a young person or you find an e-cigarette, they have no business having that thing, because now they are developing hash oils that can go into these e-cigarettes, which gives no odor and no smoke. And these young people can hide the e-cigarette in reference to what they do is they actually tape it under their sweatshirt and they can actually smoke it in school. Because it gives no odor.
No odor and no
smoke.
And no smoke.
But it's hash oil. It's actually marijuana.
All right. Now, do we know, is hash oil then being legalized with this bill?
Well, you could process it through the process of breaking down the cannabis plant. There's a lot of effects in reference to, you know, it's funny. We talk about medical marijuana and so forth. I recently attended a city council meeting where the mayor of the city indicated that they went to a general convention for mayors regarding this issue regarding legalized marijuana. And the number one reason why people listed on their medical marijuana application for their medical issue was stress. Okay? And what happens in and I'm not sure if the viewers are aware of this and the parents are aware of this, but you and I have a natural C1, C2 neurotransmitters in the brain that releases a form of a cannabinoid, which is a cannabis type. Mm. It helps us to understand stress and so forth, and anxiety and depression and so forth. And what happens is, as they process this plant and break it down into a THC, which is the drug, it actually accelerates the neurotransmitters in the brain. Therefore, people feel that of that anxiety or that stress or that inflammation in the body. It's a pain relief. And so what we are producing is almost an acceptance. And let me just tell you this, and I know I've got a lot of information, and that's why this luncheon is so important, because I want our viewers. We're going to talk about the signs that parents can see in their kids. We're going to be talking about how the cannabis plant is broken down. You do realize that there are 65 different cannabis elements of the marijuana plant.
No, I don't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow.
Exactly. And THC is just one of them. They're actually generating medicine away from the THC that controls epilepsy. That I agree with, yeah. Right? But and it's non-narcotic, okay? What happens is that we become addicted to the pot. I'm telling you, Perry, this is a bad law. Since Colorado started this law in the last 5 months, their DUIs in the state of Colorado has increased 12.5% in driving under the influence. Even though they generated almost $60 million of revenue, it is coming out. The New York Times wrote an article, for every $1 that it's generating in income, it's going to cost the state $10 for addiction recovery. So we got a problem here.
All right, and it's coming to Oregon. In fact, it's been passed and it's going to be implemented. I want to just say to parents, I want to say to you pastors and you youth pastors, you need to go to this luncheon. You say, well, you know, we'll deal with it when it comes in the church. No, you're going to have to be proactive.
Absolutely.
I think if the young people know that you're watching them now for this, you're on the look, you're on the take.
Absolutely, and it's been proven.
Yeah.
The Substance Abuse Mental Health Association in Oregon wrote an article. The more you talk about prevention risk and about the drug, the lower the addiction rate goes down. Parents have to have a conversation. We're missing the old gathering around the family table and having a discussion at dinner.
Yeah.
Everything is social media now.
Right.
And so we want the parents to know, we want our churches. We've already gotten calls at the office saying, please come talk to our parents at our church. You know, and so we're booking appointments that we're doing a PowerPoint presentation. We're giving the parents signs to look for in reference to drug use. And not just we're talking about pot. This Thursday, we've got a great guest speaker. He's coming up on a year being clean and sober. He started using marijuana at the age of 15.
Wow.
And it escalated into heroin, meth, K2 spice, which is a synthetic cannabis, and alcohol and so forth. And what a great testimony of God's transformation power in this young man's life.
Wow.
Because once he got faith back into his life, he saw the benefits of the joy of being clean and sober, and now he's got his kids back.
Wow.
And so you're going to be hearing him Thursday at our luncheon.
All right, Thursday, this coming Thursday, and it's going to be at Bobby O's, and from 11:45 to 1 o'clock. And come on by. They're going to feed you lunch, and you're going to learn about this. All right, so are kids using these e-cigarettes now?
Sure. Yeah. What's funny is that if you, and it's almost like I'm not trying to stalk, but I like to get out of the office and drive around our schools, take a look, not actually at the school, but around the vicinity of our schools, and see what's going on. Because personally for me, that's what I did. When I was at the mid-high in 9th and 10th grade, I walked down the alley there at Oakdale, found an alley there, and that's where I did my drug use. And so what I like to do is go around and I look and I see that they're using e-cigarettes, you know, and it's flavored. Now kids are getting addicted to nicotine because it's flavored.
Yeah, right. Where do they get the money?
That's one of the signs of asking our parents. Is your young person? I think it's a number 7 in our 13 signs that you can determine if your young person is using drugs, and one of it is asking for money, or money's coming up missing. I tell you what, what concerns me is these cannabis shops that are going to be selling the marijuana. Is when I was in my drug abuse, when I was in junior high and high school, all I had to do was offer $20 to somebody going into the store and say, "Hey, buy me a case of beer." You're going to see that happening. You're going to see young people handing money to people to go into these marijuana shops to buy marijuana. And the price is astronomical high. Now, one of the components that people are saying that, well, we need to legalize it because it will reduce the synthetic cannabis, the K2 spice, which you don't know what you're buying. Well, I disagree. I think what's going to happen is the price of marijuana, which is almost $300 an ounce in Colorado, and almost $280 an ounce in Washington. What you're going to see is the price come down for K2 spice, and it's going to be a synthetic alternative.
And the black market's going to go up. I mean, the black market's going to go crazy.
We just don't know what to expect. But I got to tell you, I'm so passionate about this, Perry, and that's why we're starting a new youth program this coming January. It's called Step Up, Speak Out, Stand Firm, and it's for peer mentoring ages 11 through 17. We already have 3 clients at the foundation. I got passionate about this because the Foundation for Recovery has been doing peer mentoring for adults. We're reaching astronomical, wonderful numbers of 55, 60% sobriety rate at the foundation in our adult division. But I had churches and I had pastors and youth pastors calling me saying, "Doug, what can we do for young people? Do you take young people?" And we got great programs in our community. Kevin over there at Hearts with a Mission. We got Youth for Christ. We got Circle Life. And churches are coming together. Kids Unlimited, Rogue Retreat, wonderful Maslow Project. We got wonderful organizations in our community. We need to come together and realize this is going to be an issue that we need to address now. And education is the piece with our parents.
Well, and that's what the luncheon's all about. Parents, pastors, youth leaders, go to this. They're going to buy you a pizza. I mean,
call the office at our office to reserve a seat because the seats are limited.
And that is?
That's 245-HOPE, 4673.
All right, 245-HOPE. All right. I can't say enough about Foundation Recovery and what they're doing. And your rate, I mean, it's 50-something%.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. And be on the lookout for this e-cigarette thing with the passing of Measure 91 in the state of Oregon. We just don't know. We don't know how bad this is going to get. I mean, the whole campaign was legalize it, tax it, control it. Oh, yeah, right? I mean, that just opened the door for it to be fueled like crazy.
I believe, and people from the other side will disagree. They'll say, "Doug, you're not right." To me, it is a gateway drug. You cannot tell me the number of clients that we have come through the foundation in their mid-20s who are hooked on heroin and meth, and when I ask them face to face, "How did you start? Give me a history of your program," the majority of them will say alcohol and pot.
All right. Now, this pot does not stay in your system, or stays in your system longer, but isn't detected as easy as alcohol, right?
Correct. What's really an alarming thing that I want to bring up too, Perry, even though there are short-term effects, the long-term effects in an adolescent brain is we are going to be creating a generation of almost adult zombies by the time they hit 30 and 40 years old, if they start now. This is a concern of mine, okay? And one of the things that we need to be aware of, and the parents need to be aware of, because there have been 9 deaths in the state of Colorado, all because of edible marijuana. Because when you eat and digest the cannabis, the THC I should say, the Delta-9, it processes differently in the body. So therefore, the individual taking the candy or the edible marijuana doesn't feel the high as quick as they do as smoking it. So they'll take more. We're even having children end up in the ER because they see candy that mom and dad have around the house or finding in a drawer. They're coming gummy bears. They look like gummy worms. Yeah. This is going to be a concern for Oregon. And I want our parents and our churches and our businesses to know the foundation wants to be there at your place. We want to come educate your parents.
Well, get a hold of them, 245-HOPE, and if you want to go to this luncheon coming up this Thursday from 11:45 to 1 o'clock at Bobbio's there in Central Point, get a hold of them, let them know you're coming, 245-HOPE. Doug, thank you for your passion, buddy.
Thanks, Perry. Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market. But at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Welcome back. Well, I have in my hand here a beautiful, beautiful book. It's called, entitled Arms Open Wide, A Call to Linger in the Savior's Presence by Sherri Gragg. And what a beautiful, beautiful book. Sherri is a nationally published writer, winner of the 2012 Writer's Digest competition in the inspiration category. She has, her own story is really quite rich. Maybe you can share a little bit of that with us. And then the purpose of the book. Hi, Sherri, how you doing?
I'm great, Harry. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, your own story is fascinating, finding your Christian roots. Give us a little synopsis of that.
Well, I grew up in the church from the time I was very small, maybe a week old. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, my entire life. A lot of church. But somewhere along the line, I really got a misconception about God. And I began to view him less as a loving father full of grace and more of a God who was waiting to hit me with a club when I messed up along the way. And I became very fearful of the Lord. And the time came in my life that I just was asked God to heal me, and he did it.
Okay. Got a little bit of a tech
lens in which they were written.
Okay, sorry about that, Sherri. We had a little bit of a tech blurb there. Explain your fear of God. How'd you go from loving him to fearing him?
Well, I think it had to do with some well-intentioned teachers along the way really wanting me to be holy, Harry, and you know, and that's a good thing. But I think the danger is for a child that if there's not a whole lot of focus on the fact that God loves us no fall.
Okay.
Easy.
All right.
And he'd be really disappointed in.
Okay. All right. I tell you what, we're going to take a quick break here. We're having some technical problems, and I apologize for that because part of her story is so rich as it deals with her own Jewish roots that helped in all of this. So we're going to take a quick break, see if we can finish our conversation with her on the phone. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We apologize for the Skype technical difficulties, but we have Sherri with us back on the phone, and the book is entitled Arms Wide Open, A Call to Linger in the Savior's Presence, and her own story is remarkable. Sherri, sorry about that, but I do want you to explain the book, because you had a chance to get into this, and it has a lot to do with, first of all, your own Jewish roots, but then actually going to the Holy Land and getting inspired. Give us that story.
Yes, I'm not Jewish. What that means is that I believe it's really important that to understand the gospel, that we need to study it in the culture in which it is written. And that's not something that we often do in the church. We pick up the scriptures and we read them, but we don't stop and ask the questions of what was going on at the time that Christ was speaking, and how did the people around his feet, the Jewish peasants around his feet, what was their culture bringing to that moment? And sometimes those things bring so much meaning to what he was saying. And so when I had the chance to go to Israel in 2010, that was a really big part of my journey to discover that God was kinder and gentler than I ever imagined. Because as I went there, I was able to study on site for 2 weeks with Dr. James Martin, who taught us all of these things, the culture, the history of the Bible, how the archaeology played into it all, the geography, and it completely changed the way that I saw Scripture, and along the way it brought healing to my heart.
Well, you actually transferred that storytelling into this book, which is remarkable. You know, what's so interesting is that you went from fearing God to having full liberty in Christ. That's quite a transformation.
Yes, and of course it didn't happen overnight. It was a process, but yes, that's exactly what has happened. And after I got home, I began running down all of Dr. Martin's resources like a starving person at a feast. I began reading Alfred Edersheim, and I began to read Kenneth Bailey and all of these other authors who are such a wealth of information on the culture of the Bible. And as I did, the Gospels came alive to me, and Arms Open Wide was the fruit of that. I wanted to share that with other people.
So, what do you want readers to get from this, Sherri? Because you got stories. You actually lead them in the prayer. This is really a unique combination.
Well, my hope is that for those who perhaps struggle as I did with the belief that God is out to get them, that as they read these stories and they discover Jesus through the cultural lens of the time he was living, that they will find that he's kinder and gentler than they ever imagined. And as I began to share my story with other people, I learned that there's a lot of people from all kinds of denominations that struggle with this same thing, that struggle with the belief that God's heart towards them is an angry heart instead of a loving heart. And I want those people to know that that's just not the truth.
You cover a lot, from topics to individuals. You go from beauty for ashes, forgiveness, adultery, healing, over to Nicodemus, Peter's denial, Lazarus. Quite a variety. Do you have a favorite?
Yes, I have a huge soft spot for Peter. Peter got quite a bit of page space in the book because I really love him. I love the fact that Peter loved Jesus despite all of his faults, and he spoke before he should, and his temper was not great, and he failed Christ at the moment his friend needed him the most. That at the end of it all, he really did love the Lord, and I believe that his story of Christ's restoration of him on that beach at the Sea of Galilee is a story that speaks to all of our hearts, those of us who love Jesus, and in spite of ourselves, we fall down, and we need to know that God receives us at the end of that.
The book is entitled Arms Wide Open, A Call to Linger in the Savior's Presence, and by Sherri Gragg. You may want to check it out. A picture there on the screen, put out by Thomas Nelson. See if it's available at Evangel or Christian Discount Books or online. Sherri, what's next for you? I mean, this is a result of a personal journey. What's next for you?
Well, I'm working on two things right now. I am working on a book of prayers for mothers because I'm a mother of 5. And not too long ago, I wrote on my blog a prayer for the mother of small children, and it really resonated with women. And I realized from that a lot of moms are hungry to know that God is standing beside them in their journey as they're raising their children. And so I'm working on that. But the thing I'm so excited about is I'm now beginning research to write another book, much like Arms Open Wide, that is out of the Old Testament that centers around the life of King David. And so I'm very excited about that.
Wow. Part of this, and you make mention of it earlier, I think every Christian, if possible, should go to the Holy Land, to Israel, and do the tours. I think it's forever changing, and it certainly is the case for you. It certainly impacted you. What would you say to that?
I think that's a great idea. I think that if they can go with someone that is a Christian who can bring teaching to them on those sites, that is what is ideal. There's a lot of tours in Israel, but to tour for a tour's sake doesn't get the full benefit, I don't think. I think having a trip that has teaching on site is huge because it allows us to get some context and allows us to put something tangible to the scriptures that then we can take with us for the rest of our lives. I think it's great.
Well, Sherri, thank you. And again, I apologize for the technical problems we had earlier. SherriGragg.com, is that the best way to correspond with you?
Yes, that's great. It has everything there. It has my blog and everything else. And Perry, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, have a great day. Thank you. And again, the book is entitled Arms Wide Open. There's a picture of it there. It's beautifully done. Wow, this thing is bound. Just absolutely gorgeous. So check it out by Thomas Nelson at Evangel at the Mall. Christian discounts there in books in Jacksonville, or online. I'm sure you can check it out there at Amazon as well. It's called Arms Wide Open, A Call to Linger in the Savior's Presence by Sherri Gragg. Excuse me. And again, Sherri Gragg, GRAGG.com is her website and a place for you to hook up on her blog as well. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.